At the holiday feast, my son bellowed across the table. "Mom's cooking tastes like it came from a dumpster. Old and rotten just like her." The room erupted in laughter. I rose quietly, locked eyes with him, and declared him evicted from my life. I dragged his belongings to the driveway and set them ablaze in a bonfire of betrayal. Respect isn't free, it demands a reckoning. Before we dive deeper, thank you for lending an ear to my tale. If it resonates, share where you're tuning in from and the hour on your clock. Now let me unravel my story, the one that scorched my soul and forged me anew. The spark of this disaster ignited from a well of widowhood and wistful longing. It was a crisp autumn evening 2 years after my beloved husband, Edward, succumbed to a relentless battle with pancreatic cancer. Our sprawling Victorian home in the quiet suburbs of Maplewood felt like a tomb, its high ceilings echoing with ghosts of happier times. Edward's hearty chuckles had faded into oblivion, leaving only the melancholic creak of aged floorboards under my solitary footsteps and the whisper of wind through empty halls that once buzzed with life. The garden he tended so lovingly, rows of vibrant roses in shades of crimson and blush, now stood overgrown, a testament to my neglect amid grief's heavy shroud. My son, Liam, then 32, and his wife, Sophia, 30, were squeezed into a dingy studio apartment downtown, chasing elusive dreams of financial stability amid mounting debts from student loans and failed side hustles. Liam had always been the dreamer, the one who inherited Edward's optimism but none of his practicality. "Mom, you're rattling around in this big place all by yourself," Liam had pleaded one rainy afternoon over lukewarm coffee in my kitchen, his eyes wide with what I mistook for genuine concern. Rain pattered against the bay window like hesitant applause, and Sophia nodded vigorously beside him, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the oak table. "Let us crash here for 6 months, tops. We'll pitch in on chores, ease your burdens. It'll be a win for everyone." In my haze of heartache, it sounded like salvation. A house alive with voices, perhaps even the pitter-patter of future grandkids filling the nursery that had sat unused since Liam's childhood. I envisioned bonds mending, laughter echoing through the halls once more. Family dinners where stories flowed like wine. Foolishly, my heart swelling with the desperate need for connection, I nodded yes. That was 3 years ago, and what began as a temporary haven morphed into a siege of entitlement that would test the very limits of my endurance. What I didn't anticipate was how quickly their pitching in would evaporate like morning mist on a summer day. Bills piled up unpaid, utilities, groceries, even the property taxes I quietly covered to avoid foreclosure notices staining our family name. And I, Evelyn Harper, a retired elementary school teacher of 40 years, became the unseen backbone of their entitlement, my days reduced to scrubbing, cooking, and silent suffering. Teaching wasn't merely my profession. It was the essence of my being, a calling that had defined me since I was a wide-eyed 22-year-old stepping into her first classroom. For decades, I shaped young minds in underfunded public schools, turning chaos into curiosity, ignorance into insight. I dealt with the messiest parts of humanity, kids from broken homes spilling secrets, tears, and sometimes worse in the form of accidents or neglect. Dignity was my creed. Every child deserved respect, no matter the stains on their story or the literal messes they brought through the door. I remember one student in particular, little Jamal Washington, a foster kid with a fire in his eyes but deep scars on his soul from a revolving door of unstable homes. He arrived daily in rumpled clothes that hadn't seen a wash in weeks, reeking of neglect, cigarette smoke clinging to his small frame like a second skin, mingled with the unwashed desperation of poverty. Classmates wrinkled their noses, whispered cruelties behind cupped hands, isolating him further. But I pulled him aside after recess, not to scold or shame, but to listen, to see the boy beneath the burden. "Bodies are just vessels, Jamal," I'd say softly, handing him fresh supplies from my personal stash, a clean shirt from the lost and found I'd laundered myself, a snack bar to tide him over. "Your mind's the treasure. Let's polish that instead." We'd sit in the quiet corner of the classroom during lunch, talking about books like The Chronicles of Narnia, or his dreams of becoming an astronaut, anything to lift him above the stench of his circumstances. When he graduated top of his class years later, he hugged me tight at the ceremony, his voice cracking. "You saw me, Mrs. Harper. Not the smell, not the mess, you saw me. That was my calling, guardian of potential, eraser of shame, the one who turned vulnerabilities into victories. The odors of my career? Sweat from playground chases, chalk dust clouding the air, the raw tang of poverty manifesting in unbathed bodies or spilled lunches. They weren't sources of disgust. They were badges of battles won against a system that often failed these kids. I honored the vulnerable, easing their paths with empathy, patience, and an unyielding belief in redemption. Little did I know my own kin would weaponize that very vulnerability against me, twisting my life's work into a punchline for their amusement. The honeymoon phase of their move-in fizzled faster than a cheap firework. Liam and Sophia's initial thanks, Mom chorus dwindled to indifferent grunts as they settled in, treating my home like a free hotel with unlimited amenities. Liam, a perpetual entrepreneur with a string of flops, app ideas that fizzled before launch, gig economy stints that ghosted after a week, lounged in my sunlit den, commandeering my high-speed Wi-Fi for hustles that never quite hustled into real income. His office was a chaos of tangled chargers, half-eaten energy bars, and crumpled business plans scattered like fallen leaves. Sophia, a part-time social media influencer chasing elusive likes and sponsorships, filled my once orderly fridge with trendy superfoods I couldn't pronounce, kale chips, quinoa blends, acai powders, then griped endlessly when I cooked my hearty, time-tested stews from the faded recipe box Edward and I had compiled over decades of marriage. "Mom, this is so last century," she'd sigh dramatically, scrolling her phone with one hand while pushing away a plate of my famous beef casserole. "No one eats like this anymore. It's all about clean, plant-based vibes." Their mess became my mandate. Mountains of laundry piled in the hallway like accusing sentinels, takeout cartons breeding mold in the sink, yoga mats unrolled and abandoned in the living room as tripping hazards. The guest bathroom, once pristine with Edward's favorite seafoam tiles, now overflowed with Sophia's beauty products, serums, masks, and palettes cluttering every surface like an exploded makeup counter. My prized garden, Edward's legacy of blooming roses that he pruned with such care every Saturday morning, became their shortcut path to the backyard grill. Trampled petals, a heartbreaking metaphor for my trampled spirit. I bit my tongue for the sake of family harmony, whispering apologies to Edward's framed photo on my nightstand each night. "It's temporary, love. They'll grow up, find their way." But deep inside, resentment brewed like a slow-simmering stew of my own making, bubbling with each ungrateful glance or dismissed suggestion. Grandkids weren't in the picture yet, thank heavens, as I shuddered at the thought of them being raised in this atmosphere of entitlement. But oh, how Liam and Sophia treated me like a built-in nanny for their whims and occasional pet-sitting duties. "Mom, grab us coffee while you're up," Liam would bark from the couch during his brainstorming sessions, not even looking up from his laptop. Sophia left notes on the counter. "Wash my delicates on gentle thanks," as if I were the hired help. Weekends, once my sanctuary for reading cozy mysteries in the sun porch, turned into their impromptu parties with networking friends, loud laughter echoing late into the night, empty beer bottles left for me to recycle the next morning. I found myself retreating to the attic, surrounded by boxes of old lesson plans and student thank you cards, reminiscing about the days when my efforts were appreciated, not expected. The tension built gradually, like pressure in a fault line before an earthquake. Small incidents chipped away at my resolve. Liam borrowing my car without asking, returning it with an empty tank and fast food wrappers strewn across the seats, Sophia reorganizing my pantry for efficiency, tossing out my canned goods in favor of her organic staples, then complaining when dinner wasn't Insta-worthy. My brother Tom, a burly auto mechanic with a heart of gold and a tongue sharp as a wrench, noticed during his bi-weekly visits. "Evie, they're treating you like a doormat," he'd grumble over pie in the kitchen, his grease-stained hands gesturing wildly. Edward would roll over in his grave seeing this. You gotta set boundaries. I'd wave it off with a tired smile. They're my family, Tom. Blood's thicker than water. But his words lingered, seeds of doubt sprouting in the fertile soil of my growing frustration. One evening as I ironed Liam's shirts, another unspoken chore, I overheard them in the living room, voices low but cutting. Once this app takes off, we're outta here, Liam whispered to Sophia. No more putting up with Mom's nagging and outdated crap. Sophia giggled. God, yes. Her cooking alone is reason enough. Tastes like the 70s threw up. Their laughter pierced me like shards of glass, but I swallowed the hurt, telling myself it was stress talking. Yet the cracks were widening, and I felt the first tremors of the impending quake. The catalyst arrived in the form of a grand Thanksgiving announcement, delivered with all the flair of a Broadway reveal. Sophia waltzed into the kitchen one crisp November morning, her phone aloft like a scepter, eyes sparkling with excitement. Liam's pitching his big app to investors next week. We're hosting a pre-holiday feast to schmooze them. Think elegant, not your usual potluck vibe. She plopped a printed menu on the counter, sourced from some viral food blog. Roasted quail with pomegranate glaze, truffle-infused mashed cauliflower, vegan charcuterie boards. It wasn't a request, it was a decree. My home transformed into the backdrop for their facade of impending fortune. You'll handle the food, right, Mom? Make it epic, we need to impress. For the next 10 days, I slaved away in a whirlwind of preparation that left me bone-weary. Sourcing organic turkeys from the farmer's market at dawn, baking pies from scratch using Edward's mother's recipe, though Sophia vetoed the traditional pumpkin for a deconstructed version with almond flour crust, polishing the sterling silver flatware that had been a wedding gift from my parents. Liam rearranged my cozy living room into a sterile networking space, shoving aside the plush armchairs Edward and I had reupholstered together, hiding my hand-knitted quilts in the closet and replacing family portraits with abstract prints borrowed from Sophia's influencer friends. Too folksy, Mom, Liam said with a dismissive wave. We need sleek modern, think Silicon Valley chic. Sophia nixed half my menu ideas. No mashed potatoes, too carb-heavy and basic. Try quinoa stuffing instead. It's trendy and my followers will love the pics. Exhaustion clawed at me like a persistent fog, my back aching from hours bent over the stove, my hands raw from chopping endless vegetables. Sleep came in fits, haunted by dreams of Edward shaking his head in disappointment. Tom dropped by mid-prep, his pickup truck rumbling into the driveway like a loyal steed. His burly frame filled the kitchen doorway, taking in the frenzy. Me meticulously glazing a rack of lamb, Sophia critiquing the floral arrangements with furrowed brows. Sis, you look like you've been run through a ringer, he said, his voice a low rumble of concern as he kissed my cheek. This their party or yours? Looks like you're doing all the heavy lifting while they play dress-up. Sophia, overhearing, snapped without looking up. Aunt Evie's got it under control, Uncle Tom. Just focus on making it perfect. These investors could change everything. Tom shot me a pointed look, his bushy eyebrows arching. Letting them run you ragged in your own house? Edward'd hate this, Evie. You're a teacher, not a servant. His words stung like salt in an open wound, echoing the buried fury I'd been suppressing. But I waved it off with a weary smile, stirring the sauce. Just one night, Tom. It'll be over soon. As the day of the feast dawned, crisp and golden with autumn leaves swirling in the wind, the house transformed into a stage set for deception. Guests arrived in waves. Liam's potential backers, sleek suits with shark-like smiles and firm handshakes. Sophia's blogger pals, all filters and flair, snapping selfies against my antique wallpaper. The air hummed with forced chatter about startups, viral trends, and market disruptions. I, clad in a simple black dress hidden under an apron stained with flour and herbs, ferried trays from the kitchen, deviled eggs with caviar topping, artisanal cheeses paired with fig jam, miniature quiches that had taken hours to perfect. Liam and Sophia played the perfect hosts, their laughter ringing false as they clinked glasses. No mention of my role. No introduction. Meet Mom, the wizard behind this feast. Just a casual "apps are here." As if I were anonymous catering staff summoned from thin air. I refilled crystal wine glasses with the expensive Cabernet Sophia had insisted on, cleared plates slick with remnants of my labor, all while remaining invisible in my own walls. Humiliation simmered beneath my calm exterior, a pot threatening to boil over with each overlooked "thank you" or dismissive glance. The dining table groaned under the weight of the spread. The turkey, golden and juicy, surrounded by sides I'd infused with love despite the mandates. Guests murmured approvals. Divine! Exquisite! But the praise floated to Liam and Sophia, who basked in it like royals. Then amid the haze a spark of unexpected light pierced the gloom. Midway through the main course as I served slices of the turkey, one investor, Mrs. Elena Ramirez, a sharp-eyed Latina woman in her 50s who'd risen from humble beginnings to venture capital powerhouse, paused me with a gentle hand on my arm. "You're Evelyn Harper, aren't you? The teacher who mentored my son Raul back in '95 at Lincoln Elementary." Her voice carried a warmth that cut through the room's superficial buzz. Raul, a troubled teen I'd tutored through threats of dropout, spending lunch hours drilling math and life lessons, encouraging him past the gangs and poverty that tugged at him. Now he was a successful CEO of a tech firm. "You changed his life," Mrs. Ramirez beamed, her eyes glistening. "Told him his rough edges were strengths, not flaws. He still quotes you. Education isn't about erasing who you are. It's about elevating it." The table hushed momentarily. Eyes turned from Liam's apt pitch to me. For a heartbeat I was seen. Not as the servant in the shadows, but as the savior who'd shaped futures. Pride flickered in my chest, a rare warmth amid the chill of neglect. Liam, spotting the shift in the room's energy, the spotlight slipping from his carefully curated narrative, seized the moment with a cruelty that would haunt me. As I passed the turkey platter, a backer quipped lightly, "Smells divine, but wait, is that a hint of something overcooked?" The comment was innocuous, perhaps a joke, but Liam latched onto it like a lifeline. He roared with exaggerated laughter, slapping the table. "Nah, that's Mom's specialty. Her cooking's like her. Old and rotten, straight from the dumpster." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Sophia's trill led the chorus of chuckles from their sycophantic circle, her head thrown back in mock delight. It wasn't a jest, it was a vicious jab, reducing my nurturing efforts, my life's work of feeding minds and bodies, to rot, my legacy to laughs for cheap entertainment. The room fractured in that instant. Tom, seated at the end, glared daggers, his fists clenching under the tablecloth. Mrs. Ramirez frowned in outright disgust, her fork pausing midair. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, their laughter forced and fading. But the sycophants, Liam's hopeful investors, Sophia's shallow followers, chuckled along, complicit in the cruelty to stay in favor. The insult landed like a slap, echoing Jamal's childhood taunts but from my own flesh and blood. My cooking, born from love and tradition, dismissed as garbage. Me, the woman who'd sacrificed everything, equated to decay. Something deep within me snapped, not with tears or rage, but with an eerie tranquility, a glacial calm descending like a winter frost. The world narrowed to that moment, the clink of silverware fading, the laughter distorting into a distant hum. I set down the heavy platter with deliberate care, the thud resounding like a gavel. My voice, when it emerged, was steel-forged, devoid of the warmth I'd always infused. "Liam, out!" Shock rippled across faces like a wave. "Mom, come on, it was a joke," he sputtered, his face flushing red under the chandelier's glow. "No joke," I countered, my tone unyielding as granite. "This house is mine. You and Sophia are trespassers, leeches who've drained me dry. Pack your things and leave now." Chaos erupted like a dam bursting. Sophia yelped, "You can't be serious. We live here." Liam stammered protests. "Mom, let's talk, calm down." Guests exchanged horrified glances, some rising awkwardly as if to flee. But I was unmoved, a force awakened. I gripped Liam's chair, pulling it back with surprising strength honed from years of wrangling rowdy classrooms. He stumbled to his feet, face a mask of incredulity. Sophia followed, clutching her napkin like a shield. The kids? Wait, no kids, but you too? Gone from my life. Tom stood silently supportive, blocking any retreat as I marched them toward the door. Pleading turned to threats. Our stuff. We'll call the police, you're unhinged. I ignored the cacophony, ushering them into the November chill, the door slamming behind like a final punctuation. But mere eviction felt too mild for the depth of their betrayal. Their public cruelty demanded a mirror, a spectacle of consequence. With the calm of a storm's eye, I stormed upstairs to their annex suite, once my marital sanctuary with Edward, now their lair of luxury gadgets, designer clothes, and pretentious decor. I yanked armfuls from closets and drawers, Liam's tailored suit symbolizing unearned ambition, Sophia's dresses bought on credit cards I'd indirectly paid off, laptops filled with failed schemes, even their wedding album, a mockery of family. Down to the driveway I dragged the pile, under the harsh glare of streetlights casting long shadows. Guests peered from windows aghast. A match from Edward's old toolkit, whoosh. Flames danced hungrily, consuming their facade in a bonfire of silk, leather, and lies. Screams pierced the night. Insane! Our lives burning! Liam lunged forward. Tom restrained him. Sophia sobbed hysterically. I stood unyielding, the fire's heat warming my face. Betrayal burns, son. This is your reckoning. Humiliation has a price, and you've just paid it. The door slammed once more, locked against the inferno outside. Inside, the party dissolved into awkward chaos. Guests fleeing with mumbled apologies. So sorry, Evelyn, wonderful meal. Must go. Coats grabbed, cars revving away into the night. Soon, only Tom and Mrs. Ramirez remained by the fireplace, their faces etched with shared horror and quiet admiration. Tom hugged me fiercely. Proud of you, sis. Long overdue, you finally stood tall. Mrs. Ramirez approached softly. What they said, unforgivable. If you need anything, a reference support, call me. We cleared the remnants together. Half-eaten plates of my rotten feast, abandoned glasses of fine wine now tasting of bitterness. As sobs and sirens wailed outside, neighbors had called the fire department. A strange calm settled. The toxic presence poisoning my life was gone. The price astronomical, but the emerging peace whispered promises of worth. The next day, a Saturday shrouded in gray skies, marked the tense, bitter transition. At precisely 9 a.m., a large yellow U-Haul truck rumbled down the street, parking like an accusatory behemoth in front of my home. Liam and Sophia arrived minutes later in a cab, faces thunderous, eyes avoiding mine. Liam's usual swagger was deflated, shoulders slumped. Sophia's makeup couldn't hide the puffiness from a night of weeping, her glare burning with resentful fury. They had a key, my final concession, left under the doormat with instructions via a curt midnight text. Enter, pack, leave key on counter. No conversación. I didn't help or hinder. Instead, I retreated to the kitchen, brewing a pot of strong black coffee that filled the air with its robust aroma, a small act of normalcy. Sitting at the breakfast nook overlooking the garden, roses beginning to perk up as if sensing freedom, I listened to the symphony of their departure. Angry scrapes of furniture dragged across hardwood floors. I'd polished myself. Sharp percussive screeches of packing tape pulled from rolls, low furious murmurs as they bickered over blame. This is all your fault, Sophia hissed at one point, audible through the walls. Your stupid joke. Liam snapped back. Me? You're the one who laughed loudest. They weren't just packing belongings. They were exorcising their presence with vengeful energy, slamming drawers and thudding boxes like punctuation to their resentment. Tom arrived around 10 a.m., bearing a box of fresh pastries from our favorite bakery. Cinnamon rolls sticky with icing, croissants flaky and golden. He didn't comment on the truck outside, just poured himself coffee and sat beside me, a silent pillar of support. His presence was a quiet declaration. You're not alone in this, Evie. We spent hours there sipping coffee, flipping through the newspaper, chatting about everything and nothing. His latest garage fixes, my plans to volunteer at the local library. All the while, the soundtrack of departure played on. Thumps of loaded boxes, occasional crashes of mishandled items, muffled curses. At one point, Sophia appeared in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, not meeting my eyes. She stared at the fridge. We have food in there, our organic stuff, the expensive cheeses. Are you going to pack it for us? Before I could respond, Tom stood, his chair scraping back with authority. No, Sophia, he said, voice cold and sharp as a shard of ice. Your mother-in-law isn't your maid anymore. You have boxes. You have hands. You're a grown woman. Pack your own damn food. She stared at him, face twisting in shocked fury, then turned on her heel and stormed away, heels clicking like gunfire. By late afternoon, the sound subsided. The final box loaded with a heavy thud. The rolling door of the U-Haul slammed shut like a coffin lid. Minutes later, the click of the spare key on the counter echoed through the house. Then the rumble of the truck's engine fading down the street, carrying away the remnants of their occupation. And then silence. A deep, profound, and utterly beautiful silence that wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Tom and I sat in the quiet kitchen for a long time, just listening to it, the only interruption the tick of the wall clock and the distant chirp of birds. The storm was over. The siege lifted. My home was finally completely mine again. In the weeks that followed, I embarked on the slow, methodical, and deeply satisfying process of reclaiming my space, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. The house, though emptied of their bodies and belongings, still held faint lingering ghosts. A whiff of Sophia's floral perfume in the hallway, scuff marks on walls from dragged furniture, an echo of their entitled demands in every quiet corner. It was a psychic residue of disrespect and unhappiness that I needed to scrub clean, an exorcism of sorts to banish the bad energy. I started with their former rooms, the master bedroom, my old sanctuary with Edward, where we'd shared whispered dreams and morning coffees, felt alien now, like a hotel suite occupied by careless strangers. It reeked of her perfume and his cologne, mingled with the stale scent of unwashed ambition. I threw open the sash windows, letting the crisp autumn air rush in, carrying away the last vestiges of their presence. I stripped the bed bare, bundling the expensive high thread count sheets Sophia had insisted on, and I'd unwittingly paid for, into black garbage bags. I didn't wash them. I hauled them straight to the curbside trash bin, a symbolic act of purification that brought a grim satisfaction as the lid clanged shut. The next 2 days blurred into a frenzy of deep cleaning, armed with buckets, sponges, and an arsenal of natural cleaners. Vinegar for the windows, baking soda for the carpets. I washed the walls top to bottom, erasing fingerprints and smudges, shampooed the rugs until the water ran clear, polished every piece of furniture until it gleamed like new under the sunlight streaming through spotless panes. Sweat dripped from my brow, muscles ached, but with each swipe I felt lighter, as if I weren't just cleaning my house but scouring away the memory of their entitlement, one stubborn stain at a time. When the physical cleanse was complete, I turned to aesthetic reclamation, infusing the spaces with my essence once more. The guest room, which Liam had commandeered as his home office, a perpetual mess of failed ventures, sticky notes, and discarded prototypes, was first. I packed away the ugly, functional desk they'd left behind, donating it to a local shelter. In its place, I installed a beautiful daybed with crisp linens, a small writing desk for my journals, and shelves brimming with my favorite novels, classics like Jane Austen and Toni Morrison, dog-eared from years of rereading. I hung sheer curtains that danced in the breeze, turning it back into a welcoming haven for guests I actually chose to host. The master bedroom demanded a complete overhaul. The cool, impersonal gray walls Sophia had painted over my warm beige, for a minimalist vibe, she claimed, were the first to go. Tom helped over a weekend, his cheerful banter lightening the labor as we rolled on a vibrant shade of sunny yellow, the color of optimism and new beginnings. We laughed over old stories, how Edward proposed in that very room with a rose from the garden, while the paint transformed the space. I moved my own furniture back from storage, the cherrywood bed frame Edward carved himself, the vanity with its beveled mirror where I'd fixed my hair for countless school days. On the walls I rehung photos, Edward and me on our honeymoon in the mountains, Liam as a chubby toddler grinning toothlessly, my parents in black and white elegance. I wasn't just redecorating. I was restoring my history, my narrative brick by brick, brushstroke by brushstroke. With every change, the house began to breathe again. The tense, anxious energy that had permeated it for 3 years dissipated, replaced by a quiet, profound sense of peace. Mornings now started with birdsong filtering through open windows, not demands for breakfast. Evenings were mine for leisurely walks in the revived garden, pruning roses that bloomed brighter than ever, as if celebrating their freedom too. My home was no longer a hotel or a stage for someone else's performance. It was my sanctuary, a reflection of the woman I'd rediscovered. Life settled into a new rhythmic calm. The once dreaded silence became my cherished companion, the sound of my own thoughts unfurling, my peace uninterrupted. I volunteered at the local elementary school twice a week, mentoring at-risk kids much like Jamal, finding joy in their wide-eyed progress. Grandkids remained absent, Liam and Sophia's plans delayed by their upheaval, but I ached for the innocents caught in the crossfire. After tense legal exchanges through lawyers to avoid direct contact, an arrangement emerged. If they ever had children, supervised visits on neutral ground. For now, I channeled that love into community, baking for bake sales, reading stories at the library. A month after the feast, a thick envelope arrived in the mail, postmarked from their new cramped apartment. My hands trembled as I slid it open, a fleeting hope flickering. Perhaps an apology, a bridge toward reconciliation. It was not. The letter spanned 12 pages, a rambling, bitter tirade of narcissistic revisionism. In Liam's scrawled hand, he painted himself the victim. I was the cruel, unstable villain who'd sabotaged his big break out of jealousy, embarrassed him before investors for sport, traumatized their future family with my hysteria. The insult, the dumpster jab, was dismissed as harmless banter I'd overreacted to, my outdated sensitivity the real culprit. Sophia added a postscript. "You've ruined us. Hope you're happy alone." Not a whisper of remorse, no self-reflection, just deflection and blame. I read it once in the sunlit kitchen, coffee growing cold. Then I walked to the living room fireplace, where a chill lingered despite the warming days. It was a crisp afternoon. I decided not to wait for evening. Crumpling the pages into a tight ball, words curling like dying leaves, I placed it on the grate amid kindling. A match struck, flame touching paper. It ignited instantly, black ink twisting into ash. I sat in my armchair watching it burn, embers glowing like distant stars. A profound peace settled, no anger, just release. I wasn't burning a bridge. I was clearing wreckage, making space for growth. The cost of that night? A severed bond, perhaps permanent, with the sun I'd raised and loved unconditionally. Whispers rippled through our small town, neighbors gossiping about the bonfire eviction, family friends divided in loyalty. But as I sat in my quiet, clean living room, a room finally and completely my own, sunlight dancing on polished floors, I realized a deeper truth. The price of my dignity, trampled for too long, was a bill I was no longer willing to pay. From the ashes of betrayal I rose unbreakable, unbound, ready to author the next chapter of my life on my terms. Yet the story didn't end there. Months later, ripples from that night continued to shape unexpected paths. Mrs. Ramirez, true to her word, reached out, not with pity but opportunity. "Your strength that evening? Inspiring," she emailed. "We're starting a mentorship program for underprivileged youth in tech. Your teaching background is perfect, join us." I did. channeling my experience into workshops where I taught not just coding basics, but resilience, dignity in the face of adversity. Kids like Raoul flocked, their stories mirroring my past students, and in their successes I found healing. Liam and Sophia? Whispers reached me through mutual acquaintances. They struggled in their apartment, Liam's at pitch failing spectacularly without the perfect backdrop, Sophia's influencer gig fizzling amid the scandal's online buzz. No reconciliation came. Their letters' bitterness lingered like smoke. But in quiet moments, tending Edward's roses or sipping tea in the sun porch, I felt no regret, only gratitude for the reckoning that freed me. Humiliation scorched us all, but from the fire I emerged renewed. Respect isn't free, it demands a reckoning. And mine? It was worth every flame.